Disclaimer.
Hello, ladies and gentlethems. I'm your chaotic host, Viking, and today I'll be reading 3 of my horror stories. So grab your popcorn, turn down the lights, and enjoy the show. Story number 1, Drag Show Bloodfest. Pronouns used based on the drag personas and may not match the individual's preferred pronouns. It was a late summer night, somewhere in the end of May. A local club was hosting a macabre-style drag show featuring Oedipus Flex and Dolly Darko as the hosts, with guest appearance from Iro Vanes, Zapster the Disaster, Adam Silver, Salem Savant, Aubie Gold, and Pagan Holiday. Oedipus had his long hair tied into a tight ponytail, his deep, blood-red eyes popping out against his black coat. As the show started, Oedipus introduced his love, Dolly Darko, to the rest of the crowd. Dolly had long, dark hair and was wearing a tight, somewhat see-through sparkly dress that resembled Marilyn Monroe's famous dress from when she sang Happy Birthday to the President. Her tattoos popped out through her outfit, and the crowd went wild for her. The two performed King for a Day by Pierce the Veil as the show's opener. Dolly went for a mystical vampire goddess vibe, dancing a bit slower and being more personal with the crowd, while Oedipus went for more of a demon rocker type of performance, dancing faster and using his head more. The two go around collecting their tips and being personal with the audience for the first half of the song, before turning and being personal with each other during the second half. Oedipus was holding Dolly and swaying, while Dolly moved around him, caressing his face and his chest. As the pair performed, they watched the crowd intently. Each person Dolly approached, she grabbed their hand. The patrons all just think she's grabbing for hands, they hold theirs out to tip her. But she's sneaky, and with each patron who extends their hand, she would check their pulse. Each time she did, she was looking out for 2 things: how strong the pulse was, and if the heartbeat were irregular. At the end of the duet, as the crowd cheer them on, Dolly comes and whispers into Oedipus's ear,
"Healthy across the board."
This made the red-eyed stud grin, one that was more wicked than the devil's. He looked over the crowd once and introduced the next duet before disappearing backstage. The next duet was Don't You Forget About Me, performed by Adam Silver and Salem Savant. The two had a shining 80s style theme going. Salem Savant was wearing a yellow and black crop top and fishnets, radiating a modern David Bowie vibe. Adam Silver had on a silver and black suit with a rainbow tie. He had a big, beaming, and friendly smile as he performed, making the patrons feel welcome and happy. While Salem was more sensual and intense, she stared into the patrons' eyes with smoky siren eyes. The patrons of the club seemed to melt and fall for Salem as she caught their gaze, wanting to be close to her. Could this have just been drunken mass love? Not the case with this queen. As Adam distracted the crowd with his comfort, Salem was using some sort of hypnosis on the patrons, making them fall under a spell that made them not want to leave the room. Everyone wants to be near Salem Savant for eternity, and for all they knew, it was just because they loved the show. Adam flashed a quick grin to Salem once he realized her enchantment had helped win over the crowd. Salem greeted him with a smirk, and the pair ended with a bang. Adam did this incredible dance, and Salem showed off with a full split in a stand-up routine. The crowd cheered and chanted as the two disappeared behind the curtains. The third pair to come out were Aubie Gold and Iro Vanes. Aubie was decked out in a tight denim skirt and a shiny tank top, while Iro was wearing a black button-up, black jeans with zippers on them, and a dramatic black and galaxy-colored beard look. Aubie won the crowd over with her performance. People were cheering and hollering and reaching out to tip her. She sauntered over to each patron and collected tips, her long fingernails nicking each of their thumb to draw just a little drop of blood. Iroh could smell the blood from the patrons as Abi sneakily pricked them. He grinned and started to do a striptease, ripping off his button-up and revealing his seamlessly blended ab and chest contour and a taped chest. The group fangirled and threw their tips to Iroh. Iroh slid over to the next group and did the same thing, running one of the hands of the patrons down his chest before he made his way to the rest of the patrons. Iroh took note of how everyone's blood tasted. At the end, Abi pushed Iroh into a chair and ended the number with a lap dance tease. The crowd roared as Iroh introduced the last duet and carried Abi off. Iroh stopped Pagan before she and Zapster did their number.
Alcohol levels. Every patron is good to go. End the show with a bang.
Zapster the Disaster wore a suit coat and a top hat, while Pagan Holiday wore her pink hair and space buns and wore a long, Elvira-style dress. The two performed Puttin' on the Ritz, covered by Taco. The crowd were amazed and zoned into Zapster, watching him practically float while he tap danced. He spun Pagan around as she enchanted the crowd with her sultry moves. The crowd cheered for her and relished in her glory, some chanting for encores from different performers. Oedipus poked his head out of the curtain and looked to Pagan. She did a slow, showy spin, looking at Oedipus as he raised one eyebrow. Pagan knew what that was. She was just given the signal. Pagan faced the crowd again with her arms up. As they cheered and chanted, Pagan pushed her arms forward. A large burst of invisible force caused all the lights to break and go out. A couple of patrons tried to leave, but the door was locked and unable to be opened. The two started to freak out a little bit as the rest of the performers came out from behind the curtain, all of their eyes glowing a bright red. And all 8 of the performers bared their fangs. But all the patron could see were their eyes. For a moment, the bar started to fill with heart-wrenching, blood-curdling screams as the performers attacked them and sunk their fangs into their necks. Crowds of people trampled over each other and fled for the door. But it was too late for them. This is never just a typical drag show. The whole time, the performers tested and prepped the audience for a mass feeding. And the audience fell so far into their trap. One by one, the screen stopped. The lights came on to reveal a horrid scene. Every patron in attendance was now lifeless on the floor, their necks gashed open and their bodies pale from the blood being drained out of them completely. The only survivor was the bartender. She looked at the scene in horror. Oedipus flashes her a big smile.
Don't worry.
He beamed.
We'll clean up our men.
The group laughed as Dolly walked over and slid the bartender a stack of money, flashing her a cute grin and putting her fingers to her lips while saying, Story 2. Shredded Karen. There's no shortage of thieves in the United States. That's a rather obvious fact. Legality aside, some people have unspoken rules about stealing. If you see anyone stealing food, baby formula, or things necessarily for survival, no, you didn't. The reason many people have this rule is because more than likely, the reason the person is stealing those things is because they are desperately trying to keep themselves or their children alive, and are in a position that they can't even afford to. Many people will even stop them and offer to pay for their items and anything else they need. However, there are some interesting characters that steal random things for seemingly no reason. Nail polish, makeup, and in this particular case, a chainsaw. Most of the time, chainsaws have guards on them, and if someone somehow powered it up, they would be alright. But it wasn't the case for Karen. Karen went into an old, dingy pawn shop one afternoon. It was early October, the trees had recently changed to their vibrant fall colors, and the cool breeze danced lightly around Karen's pale skin as she entered the pawn shop. A quick shiver shoots down her spine as her body adjusts to the warmer temperature of the shop. The shop owner was a big mountain man looking tight with a beard reaching down to his stomach. Something about him sketched Karen out, but she had her own nefarious plan. Karen walked to an area in the back with all the tools and garden supplies. She kept checking over her shoulder, trying her best to find a blind spot away from the man as she made her way to the chainsaws. Once she thought she was safe, she took a chainsaw from the rack and attempted to smuggle it into her pants. The two main problems with this is that Karen was wearing yoga pants, and these particular chainsaws were different. They were battery operated and didn't have a guard of any kind. And what Karen didn't realize is that there were still batteries in it from when the shop owner tested it to see if it would work. As Karen attempted to shove the giant chainsaw down her pants, the elastic around the waistband squeezed around the power button. As she pushed it down further, the elastic caused the power button to slide into the on position. The chainsaw turned on and started tearing into Karen's leg. She let out a blood-curdling wail that caused the shop owner to drop what he was holding. He ran over to the screeching woman and tried to help her, but Karen ended up falling and landing on top of the chainsaw. Her wails became more haunting in pain as the chainsaw cut her in half at the waist. The shop owner screamed in horror as Karen's lifeless body split apart and slid off the chainsaw, spilling guts and blood all over the floor. The shop owner knew he was responsible, and he went absolutely mad at the scene. While still screaming, he ran to the gun counter, pulled out one of the 9mm he had on display, loaded in a bullet, and turned the gun on himself. Who's going to clean up this mess now? Final story of the day. Right Behind You, Baby. If you're a fan of 60s music or the Fallout franchise, you'll have heard of a song called Right Behind You, Baby by Ray Smith. Most people love the catchy tune and ignore the lyrics, but for Leah, the song was a reminder of her worst nightmare. Leah panicked, speeding down the road like a maniac as she was trying to avoid the 1949 seafoam green Bel Air that was chasing her down in her Chevy 3100 pickup. Her ex-boyfriend, Jack, had gone off the deep end. Leah had lived with his abuse for 3 years. The lying, the beatings, the screaming, the destruction of property, and many, many ER visits. Leah was used to that, but this time, Jack had really lost it. Jack chased her down in his mother's antique car, blasting the song Right Behind You, Baby as he was attempting to shoot her tires out. Back at the house, Leah came home from work to find Jack standing over the table. She walked up to give him a kiss, but he grabbed her wrist instead and yanked her to the table.
What the fuck is this?
Leah looked at the table and saw it was a medical bill. Leah was diagnosed with lymphoma 2 years ago and had to start seeing doctors. This bill was for a recent visit Leah had because after a year, her symptoms started to act up again.
What about it, Jack? It's a medical bill.
She said, annoyed with her partner.
Exactly. I told you not to go back there because we can't afford these bills.
He reached back and smacked her right across the face. Leah was unable to contain her anger and she exploded and shouted at him.
I have to go see them. I have lymphoma. Do you want me to fucking die?
Followed by a hefty right hook to the side of Jack's face. Leah immediately froze in fear as she realized what she had done. Jack glared at her with a gaze that burned hotter into her soul than any sun or fire could even fathom to achieve. Jack started screaming, then grabbed his gun and started chasing Leah, shouting,
Matter of fact, I do. And I'll be the one to fucking do it.
Leah took no time. She ran into the room, jumped out of the window, and sprinted for her truck, taking off as fast as she possibly could. Leah could hear Jack screaming along the lyrics of the Ray Smith song, laughing maniacally. Finally, Jack managed to lodge a bullet into Leah's tire. The truck went out of control, and Leah swerved into one of the trees in the thick woods either side of the highway. The force of the tree rendered the truck totaled, but Leah was lucky enough to survive. Leah opened the door and slid out of the truck, attempting to crawl away as Jack got out of his car. He rapidly approached Leah, the sounds of his footsteps pounding into her brain. Jack kicks Leah on her back and holds the gun to her forehead, his pretty brown eyes now solid black from insanity. Leah cried, and Jack pulled back the pen. But before Jack could squeeze the trigger, a deafening ringing sounded in his ears. Jack screamed in pain and dropped the gun as the ringing got louder and turned into screams. Jack could feel the pain and agony he had caused Leah. He could feel the agonies of others, and their pain screams flooded his brain. Jack started wailing and flopped to the ground, writhing in pain and agony as he felt the inside of his body start burning as if he were being cooked alive. Leah grinned and stood to her feet, looking at Jack as her eyes twinkled with innocent insanity. Suddenly, a large, inhuman creature emerged from the woods. It stood at 8 feet tall, had thick, gray, leathery skin, and had a head that resembled a large Venus flytrap. Jack screamed once more in horror as the monster lunged at him, biting into his flesh and eating the abusive man, limb from limb. As the monster feasted, Leah came up and patted the top of his head, saying in an innocent, yet creepy tone,
Good boy.
And that is all I have for you today. If you guys like what I do, please leave a like and a comment and subscribe. And click that bell notification to get notified when I come up with more videos. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you next time.